We build sturdy airplanes that last a long time. 93% of DC-10s we delivered are still operational. So are 92% of DC-9s and MD-80s, and 56% of DC-8s. Even more remarkable, an estimated 1,500 DC-3s, many of them more than 50 years old, still provide reliable transportation. Vintage Airways of Orlando, Florida operates 2 DC-3s on nostalgic 1940s-like flights to Key West and other Florida destinations. Let's go along for a sentimental journey.
Vintage Air Tours is the exclusive operator of Vintage Airways, 2 DC-3 flights out of Central Florida to Key West on a 4-day regularly scheduled circuit. The initial concept behind Vintage Air Tours was to try to recreate the romance, if you will, of travel in the late 30s up through about the mid-50s. And we do actually take you on a time capsule trip, if you will, from present day to 50 years ago, if you will, back into the mid-1940s. And we have all, as you can see, authentically restored interior crews, and flight hostess are all dressed in 1945 vintage uniforms. We also have a mascot, which was quite popular in the mid-40s. We have a chocolate labrador. Her name is Skippy, and she comes and walks through the pilot inspection of the aircraft pre-departure, and on occasion when we don't have passengers, Skippy flies on board to different destinations. So in addition to that, we also have a series of original issue magazines that have all been reprinted for Vintage Air Tours, and they are Saturday Evening Post, Life, and Look magazine from the mid-40s. Of course, there was no polystyrene or plastic in the mid-40s, so all the onboard services are done in the motif of the year, if you will, in cut-leaded crystal glasses and bone china, and it's quite a unique experience. We also, as you'll note, one major modification, in addition to the comfort of air conditioning on board, we have also installed a state-of-the-art solid-state musical system throughout with old 1940s big band sound of Frank Sinatra and others. So from the time they check in our terminal, we take them immediately on this trip back in time 50 years. We do something very different from other air carriers from the standpoint that once we're airborne and established at altitude, we open the cockpit door and invite each one of our passengers up into the cockpit to strap on the seatbelt and the headphones and actually get a pilot's eye view, if you will, of cockpit activities en route to our destination.
The airplane itself is, by modern standards, heavy on the controls, but it gives it a steadiness, stability that makes it relatively easy to fly. You trim it up and pretty much flies itself. The instrument panel is modern instruments. Of course, the radios, the 1940s radios aren't applicable today. The flight instrument group is new, but from there on back, it's pretty much like it was. All the systems and everything else, there's no need to modify them. These engines are the Pratt & Whitney 1830-94, 1,830 cubic inch, producing 1,350 horsepower. They make lots of noise, kind of like the Harley Davidson of the sky, too. And there's nothing that sounds like a radial engine. I always enjoyed hearing them. As you add the power, start the aircraft rolling, you're actually pushing forward on the stick to get the tail up, as opposed to pulling back as in a tricycle gear aircraft. So you get the tail up and you get your flying speed, and then you bring the control yoke back. The airplane lifts off the ground so smooth, I get a lot of passenger comments that they didn't even feel the takeoff. When it's ready to fly, you kind of have to hold it on the ground. It wants to fly right away. That's a big wing. it'll come off the ground at 40 knots if you let it. So we fly typically around 5,000 to 8,000 feet. We do not carry oxygen. Also, we want the passengers to be able to see the scenery. And I believe McDonnell Douglas has stated that there is no service life on the aircraft. As long as the airframe is maintained, it should last indefinitely. I believe him. It's a classic airplane. It's worth keeping up, worth keeping the airplane around.
The typical passenger is looking for something. They are here either as a major interest of a past aviation history, or people who know that they'll not have the opportunity in the far distant future to fly aboard the airships of the early transport stages of American history.
There are still some DC-3s flying in England with a company called Air Atlantique in the town of Jersey, and they fly rides like this. They've done very well over the years. You still see a lot of them around. They're not all in museums.
This is a very special, old, interesting airplane. It's probably one of the best commercial airplanes that was ever built. And Douglas ought to be really proud of this aircraft. It's really special. But this is wonderful to fly on.
Well, most of my World War, I served abroad on September the 16th, 1939. And I didn't come back until 1945. I did 7 landings. So, but you saw these all the time flying around. So it does bring back memories. Oh, this sort of thing is just so nostalgic, it's not true. It's an experience in itself. I don't often smile, but this does make me smile.